on a poll I posted this week, we are going to look at something a little different today. I picked one genre for each and every letter from A to Z, except Q, U, Y, and Z, because I didn't find nothing quite Zulu. And I'm gonna show you in what BPM and where to place the elements specifically for that genre. But don't forget that this video is mostly about the placement, and it's going through a drum kit preset in Flex, so the sound selection is not good. Anyways, if you're looking for a specific genre, there is a timeline down below, so you can skip right there. But if you don't find it, just write it down in the comment section so I can hopefully include it in the part 2. Anyways, enough yapping and let's get straight to it. Afrobeat, between 95 and 120 BPM. First you want to place kicks like this, first, second, third and fourth, and just repeat it. For hi-hats you just place 4 like this and delete the second one and repeat it over and over. Then you can add a perk, snare, whatever. So you place the first one, skip 2, skip 2, skip 3 and skip 1 and repeat it once again. B, boom bap, between 85 and 95 BPM. Add a snare on every second and fourth. Then add a kick on the first one, on the third one right after, and you can give it a slight little one bit of that prefix. For hi-hats you go basic 2-step, then delete the one right at the end, and instead of that place one open hat. And you can even offset the hi-hats to give it more of that natural feeling. C, country, between 100 and 130 BPM. First place kicks, one on the first and one also on the first. Then one right after the second one and one right before repeating the pattern. Then add 4 claps on the second, on the fourth, on the second and on the fourth. And then fill it out with hi-hats. D, drill, between 130 and 145 BPM. Add 1 kick on the first and 1 kick on the second. Add 1 snare on the third, 1 on the fourth and 1 right before it. And then for the typical drill hi-hat you want to start on the first, then skip 2, then skip 2, then repeat it over and over. And now you can do whatever you want with it, which means that you can place hi-hats basically wherever you want, let's say here. E, East Coast, between 85 and 95 BPM. You want to add a snare on second, fourth, second and fourth. Add a kick on the first, then also on the first you can add one right before, which is typical for old school hip hop. Then you can add one right here. To switch it up a little you can add a second here, copy this one over here and just add it like this. Fill it out with hi-hats once again and leave out the last piece for an open hat. F, funk, between 100 and 115 BPM. Start with a snare on the second, fourth, second and fourth. Now skip 2, place 1, skip 1, place 1. Lower the velocity, offset it a little and copy it over here. Place a kick on the first, then between these 2 snares and then also between these 2 snares. And add 2 kicks right after the first one. Once again fill it out with hi-hats and then start on the first, skip 2 and place a right. Repeat it in all 4 segments. Start here, skip 2, start here, skip 2 and start here, skip 2. G, gospel, between 80 and 120 BPM. Start with a snare on the second, on the fourth, on the second, and here leave a room for a drum fill. Place a kick on the first, on the third, on the first and on the third. Add one right after the second one and here just skip 1. Now for the fill you can either use snares or toms, and you can use a basic fill of 4. So let's do 2 higher toms and 2 lower. And to finish it off just add a crash on the first one. H, hardcore hip hop, between 90 and 100 BPM. And this is pretty easy. Place a kick on the first one, then here on the second one. Add 2 claps on the third ones, and once again fill it out with hi-hats. I, indie rock, between 120 and 135 BPM. Add a snare on the second, on the third, on the second, on the third. Fill it out with kicks, but delete the kicks that are on the snare. Now fill it out with rides. Add a tambourine or a shaker on the fourth one and top it off with a crash on the first one. J, jazz, between 120 and 150 BPM. For jazz you want to actually switch your grid to thirds and start with the typical jazz ride. Start on the first one, continue on the second one, fill it out with 3 like this, the one column, and delete the second one and copy it over. Now you want to add the sound of a closing hi-hat pedal and put it on every second and fourth. Now put kick on the first one, and also on the first one. And with snare, which is the last element, you can do basically whatever. K-pop between 100 and 130 BPM. Start with a 2-step hi-hat, add snare on every second and fourth, add 1 kick on the first and on the third, then after the first one don't skip, just add 1, and after the third skip 1, add 1 and delete this one. L lo-fi between 60 and 90 BPM. Start with a 2-step hi-hat once again, add clap on the second and on the fourth, add kick on the first, on the third, then add 1 right before the second one, and skip 1 from the second one, and add 1 and bounce it over. M, Memphis Rap between 140 and 160 BPM. Start with a 2-step pattern, add a snare on the third and on the third once again, add a kick on the first, on the fourth, on the second, and after the last snare just follow the hi-hats. And now pick a rim, perk or a zap. Basically whenever there is a hi-hat and not a kick or a snare, add it there. And new wave between 120 and 140 BPM. Start with 2 snares, 1 on the third, second on the third. Now add a kick on the first, on the fourth, and on the second. Apply a 2-step hi-hat and split these hi-hats in half on the second, on the third, on the second, and on the third. O, old school between 90 and 110 BPM. Start with a snare on the second and on the fourth and on the second and on the fourth. Add a kick on the first, on the third, on the first and on the third. Now add a 2-step hi-hat, but in the second repetition split the first one in half and the one right after also, but also the hi-hat on the third and on the fourth. P, pop between 110 and 130 BPM. Start with a snare on the second, on the fourth, on the second and on the fourth. Add a kick on the first, on the third, on the first and on the third. And after this kick, skip 1 and add 1 more. Fill it out with a 2-step hi-hat and finish it off with a crash on the first. R, rap rock between 130 and 150 BPM. Start with a snare on the third and on the third. Now pick a different snare, place it on the first, skip 1, add 1 and delete the first one. Now add a kick on the first, on the fourth and on the first. Now fill it out with a 2-step hi-hat. Now count to 3 and 5 and delete those hi-hats. 1, 2, 3, delete, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, delete, and repeat the same process. 1, 2, 3, delete, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, delete. Now split into half the hi-hats on the first, on the third, on the first and on the third, and here you go. S, Southern hip hop between 70 and 90 BPM. Start with a snare on the third and on the third. Add a kick on the first, on the fourth and on the fourth. And now place kicks right before the snare and top it off with a 2-step hi-hat. T, trap between 130 and 150 BPM. Start with snares on the third and on the third. Now add a kick on the first, on the fourth and on the second. For the hi-hats you will have to switch to thirds once again and just basically fill it out. And now delete hi-hats wherever you feel like. I like to delete these two, this one and these two. And instead of these two, place a 1 open hi-hat. V, Vaporwave between 50 and 70 BPM. It's really slow. Start with a snare on the second, on the fourth, on the second and on the fourth. Add a kick on the first, on the third, 1 right after and 1 right after the snare. Now fill it out with a shaker but delete those that are matching the snare. This one, this one, this one and this one. W, West Coast between 90 and 100 BPM. Start with a snare on the second, on the fourth, on the second and on the fourth. Add a kick on the first, on the third, on the first and on the third. And add 1 more between the snare on the second and the kick on the third. Now fill it with 2-step hi-hats, offset them a little by holding Alt and delete the 6th hi-hat of the repetition. Boom, boom. And fill these 2 blank spaces with an open hat. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. If I didn't include the genre you were looking for, make sure to write it down in the comment section. Subscribe, like this video, and I will make sure to include it in the second part. See you on the next one.